Hello there and welcome to this week's Granny's Garden. Well, as you can see, I'm actually not in Granny's garden, I'm in my daughter's garden. And I'm here to create from scratch a new garden border or a new area. Now this garden is small, very, very small. The total length is about 23 feet and the total width is only about 7 foot. Beside it's got a driveway, but we're not counting that because that's not garden area. And it consists of two actual planting areas. One is like a raised bed, which is about 12 foot long and 2.5 foot wide, but we're not going to look at that for the moment. That'll be further along the line. And the other is at the end of the garden. And it's literally only 7 foot wide by 6 foot deep. So very, very small planting area. Now I'm going to start this from scratch, and it's very interesting to start something from nothing and then build it up. And I want to take you along the process so you can see how I go about doing it. Now, right now, I'm sitting with my back to the house, mainly to try and get out of the wind. It is the very first day of February. It is absolutely freezing cold, and it's really, really, really windy and blustery. So I'm trying to duck down and huddle down beside the little wall I've got here beside me to see if it helps, at least with the sound. So the very, very first thing, and I've said it several times on many of my videos, the very, very first thing you need to know when you are creating a new area is track the sun. Now, the elevation of the house where I'm sat is north-northwest. Does that mean that the entire garden is north-northwest? No, and that's something to take into consideration. I can't say this is a north-facing garden because the little area I'm going to plant is in actual fact at the end of the garden. I'll be taking out a compass in a few minutes to see it. And if I go to the very end of the garden and face the way the border faces, in actual fact the border is south-southeast. Now that should be a sunny area. But again, you've got to take more things into consideration. First of all is the elevation of the house itself. This is a 2-story house and the garden is very long. So although the border is south-southwest, probably in winter you're not going to get any sun at all because the sun isn't high enough to be able to get higher than the roof of the house and project sun onto the actual house itself. So in winter the sun isn't going to be high enough and the garden is not long enough to be able, when it finally peaks the roof of the house, to be able to hit that border. If I turn it very quickly around, you'll see now it's now past midday and the sun, which is now heading towards the south, is in actual fact hitting, wait to turn it around, is hitting the house in front. You can see these houses are nicely lit up, but the actual border, which we're going to plant, is in complete and utter shade. That means in the summertime you are going to get from about here as far as there, you are going to get nice sun in the summer. As regards sun coming in from the west, there's nothing really blocking this area, but unfortunately on the right hand side there is a massive pine tree. So all of these things you have got to take into consideration. Now in this small area, which as you've seen is only 7 foot wide and 6 foot deep, there were no less than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 giant Arizona cypress trees. Worse still, the 2 trees that were next to the walls caused structural damage. As you can see, this one is actually almost engrossed into the wall. It obviously knocked out the complete wall. This had to be repaired. And on the other side, a lot slimmer, but it still managed to crack the entire wall all the way up here, all the way over and all the way up. This had to be knocked out, cleaned out and resealed. So as you can see, I mean, how anybody planted a plant that close, a tree no less, that close to a wall is beyond me. So the moral is, when you go to a garden centre and you see these beautiful little small conifers about 2 foot tall and that's saying, please buy me, don't. If it has a tag, read it and see what the ultimate height of the tree is going to be, because you could be in big problems 10 years, 15 years down the line. On the plus side, these are cypress trees, so they have been cut down and they're not going to resprout or send up shoots or suckers and anything like it. Once they're cut, they're cut. The roots, they're still under there. And they'll eventually rot down, of course they will. How long it's going to take, I don't know. What I'm going to do now is just give a little bang around with my pickaxe and see what the roots are like or what the soil is like underneath. Goodness, that's rocky. This seems to be in a rubble dumping place after making concrete. because these are not natural rocks. These are sort of like the ones you buy to mix up to make hard concrete. Look. Yep, same thing. Now I'm in a root section here. So the roots are very, very superficial, which is normal in cypress trees. Not good for immediate planting. It'll be fine in about 3 years' time. But it's giving me a general idea of what to expect. Goodness. Whoa, we have got a lot of rocks. Now, I also see he's got some nice lava rocks here. Yeah. Interesting flat rock there as well that I might make use of. A nice one over there. These ones not so much. Nice flat rock there as well. That's interesting. Regarding the actual tree stumps, well, those ones are basically hidden away, so they're okay. This is going to have to be dug up. This is going to have to be dug up. That's quite a substantial oleander tree or bush. The crown of it is quite wide, so it's going to leave quite a bit of digging. This I'm not quite so sure. Because this is my grandson's house and I want to look something whimsical, wouldn't it be nice if I just put a little face there, one of these tree faces? I think that'd be actually quite sweet. Yeah. Obviously these ones I'll have to think about, but I don't like those at all. We'll take those out. These two I'm going to take out. I'm going to leave this, and then I'm going to have to remove this and that. And then what I think I'm going to do, because of the rocks I'm finding, this has obviously been a dumping ground for the people who actually made like the driveway that was made of concrete, or the actual pathway that again is concrete and concrete tiled. What I think I'm going to do, because it's going to take about 3 years' time before these roots rot down, belong to these Arizona cypress, is that I might take advantage and put a little bit of topsoil on, mounding it slightly, and then locate these lava rocks, possibly bring in a few more from my countryside, which is laden with rocks. And I'm not going to make a rockery. I don't want to make a rockery, because these are newbie gardeners, and they're both working parents, they've got a young child, and they've got really no time to dedicate to the garden. So I wouldn't give an alpine plants are fairly easy, but I certainly wouldn't give it to a very, very new gardener, especially one with no time. So what I'm thinking of doing is locating, as I said, mounding, and then locating boulders and bringing in some more rocks, and then make a border with rocks in it, but it must have winter interest, all year round interest. Now this video is going to be filmed over several sessions, because creating a border does pass through different phases. Phase 1 in my book is always the most important. For me it's reconnaissance. First of all, for me, obviously it's tracking the sun, because I can't choose any plant unless I know if that border is going to be in sun, shade or sunshade. Okay, so I've had a look and I've shown you on the camera all the problems that I have. The area is small. It's not going to get a heck of a lot of light, certainly in winter. In summer it's going to be a lot better. It has had to have several huge, massive trees that should never have been planted there in the first place, so they've got a lot of roots going on there. And then they seem to have left a lot of rubble from making concrete, so it's very rocky as well. So how do I deal with that? I know the roots are going to rot down. The roots in about 3 years' time are going to start rotting down, no problem at all. But I want to plant now. So what I'm thinking of doing, because he's got several lava rocks, is mound it slightly, place those rocks, not to make a rockery, because as I said before, these are newbie gardeners, so it's basically got to take care of itself. For me, the best type of thing for that is shrubs. Because the area is small, they've got to be small shrubs. Certainly not going to plant any more colossal great conifers, I can tell you that. The next thing is irrigation. Plants do not do well with famine and feast. Remember, I live in Spain. It gets really, really hot here in summer, and because I'm not in the mountains, because my daughter lives down towards Madrid, they have hot nights and hot days. So what they can't have is a plant that isn't irrigated, because they're not going to be able to remember, and they might have time to water the plants. And you can't have that. A plant can't be soaked one day and then nothing for the next 3 weeks. So I need something that once the month of May comes, that's going to get a regular drip system that's going to turn on and turn off. And it is going to be drip to help save water. So the type of plant I'm looking for in Fronda is winter interest, evergreen, variegated, something that's either not going to grow too tall, or like the Abelia, a variegated Abelia, is something that you can cut or hack the hell out of, and it's not going to make a bit of difference. It'll come back and it'll always look beautiful. There is a variegated, like a pink variegated Abelia, which is gorgeous. I don't know if I can be able to get my hand on it, but I'm certainly going to try. Also, because my grandson is here and he loves the garden. He loves gardens. When he was a little tiny baby and he used to be in my house, and he'd have a cranky day and he'd be crying and there'd be no way you could get him to calm down. You just open the door and go into the garden, and it was instant, turning the tap off. He just was all smiles. He was looking at the trees, listening to the wind blowing through the leaves. He was in his element. So only a tiny little planting area, but if I can bring some little element into it, like to put a face on one of the tree stumps, or like put a gazing ball, or maybe a kinetic windmill, something that's going to attract his attention and is going to look just, for a kid, for goodness sake, you can make your garden magical. As the kid gets older, you can make it less whimsical and more adult interesting. But it's lovely to add some element in for children, because gardens are not only for adults, they are for kids too. Well, I've just arrived back from Fronda. So I'm going to turn the camera around so you can see what I bought. This is what I've got to start off with. Very quickly from left to right. This is an Abelia, but this is a small Abelia, about 2.5 foot high is going to max out, and it's called Kaleidoscope. Obviously Kaleidoscope because it gets covered in different types of colours depending on the season it's in. It's an absolutely stunning plant. Behind it, I've got Corpusmo, the mirror plant, and of course the one I've chosen is Chocolate, to contrast beautifully with Abelia. Lovely, lush, dark brown leaves all year round. What a beautiful plant. I just got 2 flowering bulbs at the moment, the Agapanthus. I've got a purple one and I've got a white one, because they do so well in this area and you don't have to look after them for anything. You just plant them and leave them. Then coming down to the blue scale, I've got 2. I've got one juniper here, which is the Blue Star. Beautiful, soft, feathery leaves, won't grow very tall, nice mounded shape, absolutely lovely. And on the grey scale I've got 2 Santolinas, very tiny at the moment, but they won't get that big. They'll sort of obviously get bigger and wider, not this small. And of course, during the year they've got these beautiful pom-pom yellow flowers that are so, so pretty. And then finishing off this group, I have Grevillea. Now this Grevillea is you can see it there, Mount Tamburiza. The great thing about this particular Grevillea is it doesn't grow very high, it mounds beautifully, and it's in flower most of the growing season. It's an absolutely stunning plant, and the leaves almost look like a succulent type. Look it up close. Aren't they just beautiful? So when they're in the bud stage, they even look beautiful. They look like a flower in the bud stage, and they open up to sort of like almost like a pod opening up and put out these little tongues. Exquisite plant. Now what I need to do the next time is get my mounding done, place my boulders, and place these structural plants in between so I can find out what spaces I have left and what not. Obviously, come October and November, well this autumn, I'm going to be planting daffodils, because daffodils are a beautiful spring bulb and you can't go wrong with it. It naturalises on its own. If left to its own devices, it doesn't need to be irrigated, nothing. You just leave it to its own devices. So a fantastic bulb which I will get in this autumn. Well, as you can see, everything I bought in Fronda today is based on what I saw earlier in the morning when I was doing the Reconnaissance, which is phase 1 of creating a border. I saw that this particular border is small. It's going to be in sun and shade. It's not very big, so I'm going to need smaller plants. Because the garden belongs to who it belongs to, and I know it's going to get a bit forgotten about because I just haven't got the time, I bought plants that are going to be evergreen for all year round interest, ones that can practically take care of themselves, Ones that don't need to be pruned particularly much. I'll probably do the pruning anyway, but nothing that needs a specialist care. Always, when you're creating a border, it's not only the actual sunshade aspect, it's also who is going to take care of the garden. You can't expect young married couple, young child, both of them working, to be full-on gardeners. That's just not a case. And the weekends they probably want to be with their child in the park, out playing, and now and again they'll garden. But they just haven't got the time. So when you're thinking of how much time do I have to dedicate to the garden, choose your plants accordingly. So choose your plants according to who the garden is for and aspect, sun, shade, etc. Well, phase 2 obviously is going to be digging up those adelphas, what do you call them in English, the oleanders, mounding up the soil, getting those boulders set and planting these structural plants that you've seen behind me. And then it's a case of just fluffing it up. Maybe an annual here and there, definitely bulbs in autumn, a little face on the tree stump, a little maybe windmill, I don't know. Nice little whimsical things will come after us. So those are the added sequins, let's say. First of all, let's get the dress, then we'll get the sequins. Well, I'm going to head in now before I take off like Mary Poppins because the wind is getting stronger and stronger and I don't know where we're going. So if you don't want to see me take off like Mary Poppins, be here next week in Granny's Garden. See you then. Bye-bye now.